Welcome to the Wareham Conservation Commission meeting of Wednesday, September 5th, 2018. A roll call, please, Mr. Baptiste.
All right, members present. Be Alyssa Hurd, Mary Taggart, Joe Leggett, myself, Ken Baptiste, Chairman Sandy Slavin, Jim Smith, and Rob Lassen, and the agent, David Pichette.
Thank you. We have some continued public hearings. I want people to know that this is being recorded for telecast to WCTV at a later date, and for all public comments, we will be limited to those items that can be covered on the conservation wetland bylaws. We have a request for a continued hearing for Greg Carey and Clean Energy Collective. Is there anybody here for that hearing? They made a request to be continued until 9/19. I need a motion, please.
So moved.
Okay.
I heard Alyssa, I heard Ken seconded, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Going to continue to 9/19. The next hearing that will be continued until 9/19 is South Coast Hospital Group. Is there anybody here for the consideration for that hearing? I see none. I'd like a motion to continue until
So moved.
9/19. I heard Alyssa.
Second.
And Ken seconded, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, continued. The next continued public hearing is Robert C. Gleason. Anybody here to speak for that project? Please come forward and identify yourself.
Robert Gleason.
I think we were missing the green cards last time,
Which we have.
which we have. Okay, here. So Mr. Pichette will talk about the project.
The project site is at 1 Seahorse Lane, and the project involves the construction of a garage within a coastal flood zone. 28 by 30-foot garage is proposed within flood zone AE elevation 16. The garage would be on a concrete slab foundation, and the garage would not be in the buffer zone to any other resource areas. The site is a relatively flat area with no grade changes proposed. As was mentioned, we were waiting for the abutter notification card, which we have since received, so I would recommend the approval of the project with a negative determination number 2.
Thank you. Any other comments you'd like to make on the project
I'm all set.
for the board?
Lisa.
Jim? Alyssa?
None.
Mary?
No question.
Joe?
No questions?
Kenny?
Nope.
Anybody in the audience for or against this project at 1 Seahorse Lane? I'm seeing none. I'll take a motion to close.
Motion to close.
Kenny's motion to close the hearing.
Second.
Second by Alyssa Hurd. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed, abstain, hearing is closed.
Motion for a -2.
I have a motion to grant a -2 for this project.
Second.
I have a second from Mr. Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstain? You got it. Please see Mr. Pichette before you start any work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next hearing. Continued,
Very good.
We just can't take you anywhere.
Well, it went one way and then it didn't go.
while they sign and fold, I will start with Mr. Edward Ryan in care of J.C. Engineering. Is a continued hearing?
Should be a moot point.
Miss Mary gets it.
It got in the wrong place.
Thank you. Please identify yourself for the record.
Good evening, for the record, John Churchill, JC Engineering. Edward Ryan, Bakers Island Road resident.
Thank you. Pichette, you got the breakdown. Mr. Pichette will speak to the project.
So this project site is at Baker's Island Road in Onset, and the project involves the installation of a new water main in the buffer zone to salt marsh and within a coastal flood zone. The project is also within the estimated habitat of rare and endangered species. Approximately 1,023 feet of 4-inch water main is to be installed within the existing gravel roadway known as Baker Island Road to replace an existing water main that is failing. The existing water main that services this area comes from Sunset Island and goes under part of Sunset Cove, and it's not feasible to replace the main in that same location. The salt marsh is close to portions of the road, and the new main would be approximately 10.5 feet from the edge of the marsh at its closest point. The work is also within coastal flood zone AE elevation 14. Trenching would occur within the existing gravel road to install the new water main. Hay bales would be installed along the edge of the road between the work and the salt marsh. Connections to the individual homes are also included as part of the application. This will occur within the existing lawns and driveways for those connections. We also did get comments from the Mass Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program, and they commented that the project would require a turtle protection plan approved by the Division of Fisheries and Wildlife if the project is to occur within a certain time of year, which was June 1st to July 31st. If the work occurs outside of that time period, then they have stated that no such plan would be needed. We do have a DEP file number for the project, so I would recommend the approval of the project with the order of conditions, with the standard conditions, conditions for dewatering, because that may be required during this project, and also the conditions requested by the Mass Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program.
You done?
Any comments, please? Would you like to add anything
Nope. Well said.
from the board?
How deep is the line?
Excuse me?
How deep is the line?
It's going to have to be at least 4.5 feet.
I have nothing.
Ms. Baptiste?
Nope.
Joe?
No questions.
Mary?
No question.
Mrs.
No.
Hurd, anything?
No.
I'm giving up on the first name.
Hard.
Took me 3 years to get it right.
We'll have
Is there anybody in the audience that'd like to speak for this project at Barker Island? Anybody opposed to it? Seeing none, I'll take a motion to close the hearing.
So moved.
Mr. Baptiste moved to close the hearing. Alyssa seconded it. We have closed the hearing. Next.
Motion to grant, normal stipulations with the added stipulations that the agent had stated about dewatering and the time frame that National Heritage
For
is.
turtle protection, yes. That is the motion.
Second.
I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. Before you do anything, see Mr. Bichette for all the approved paperwork.
There's quite a few houses.
Sandy and I tried to find that spot. No matter which way we went in, we were into a tree cutting. What's the road is blocked? Are you gonna copy that?
I do, thank you. We have another continued hearing, Buzzards Bay Coalition. I believe this is for the Station Street project. Please identify yourself for the record.
Sarah Quintal with Buzzards Bay Coalition.
Ms. Bichette will read the statement.
Do you have advised?
Do you-
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All set.
Same people.
It's 31st still. This is old.
Yeah. Oh, we talked about this last time.
Yeah, this was last time.
Everything looks the same.
The project location is at 38 Station Street, which is the Horseshoe Mill Dam and Conant Hill property. And the project involves controlling invasive plant species by physical cutting and the application of herbicides, and also trail enhancement at the site. The work is in the buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetland, partially in the wetland at the site where the vegetation control work is to be done. There's 2 stands of Japanese knotweed also that are proposed to be treated. And then there's approximately a 2-acre stand of Phragmites that has taken hold again within the wetland that's also to be treated. A mechanical harvester is proposed to use to initially cut the Phragmites stand and then later treat that with an herbicide down the road. Also proposed as part of the project is the enhancement of trails at the site. At the last meeting, after initially looking at the trail location, it was decided that that needed to be relocated because a good part of that was actually proposed within the wetland. Sarah has since gone out and relocated the trail. We've reviewed that, and the revised trail location is acceptable, and so I would recommend approval of that as presented on this revised plan. We have also received a DEP file number for the project at this time. So I would recommend the approval of the overall project with the standard conditions and the added condition to have a licensed herbicide applicator be required for this project.
Is there anything you'd like to add?
I guess just one quick point of clarification on the invasive species management. We would be looking to get started this month, and with the Phragmites work, we'd actually be treating it first with the herbicide and then coming back later this winter to do the cutting. That has been found to work very well for this particular plant species. And the knotweed would get also the herbicide treatment later this month.
Questions?
No.
No?
None.
At the last meeting, hearing, somebody mentioned the possibility of testing the water to make sure that the herbicide has dispersed as quickly as you say you are. Have you considered that as a possibility?
We have not. It isn't really standard practice with
Okay.
these types of restoration projects to do so, and the full intent is to do the treatment and not have any of it get in the water whatsoever. So how the treatment occurs is really aimed away from the water, and all effort is made to not get any in the water at all.
Thank you. Anybody here like to speak against this project? For this project? All right. I think that does it. Make a motion to close the hearing. I need a motion.
So moved.
I have a
Second.
move, and I have a second from Mary. All in favor of closing the hearing? Aye. Opposed, abstained? Hearing is closed. Next. Somebody make a motion.
Motion to grant with standard conditions with the added one of having a licensed herbicide applicator.
And I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? Granted.
Thank you.
Please see Dave before you start the work. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You gotta show them, you gotta send this to Andrew, the school, being able to figure out what is wetlands or what.
Don't go there.
That was back to back last time.
It's 7:15. So as soon as that paper gets passed around and signed, we can start our hearings. Okay, Mary, please start.
All right. Town of Wareham Conservation Commission, Memorial Town Hall, 54 Marion Road, Wareham, Mass. 02571. Notice of public hearing. Pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protection Bylaw, Division 6, a public hearing will be held in Room 320, Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Mass., on Wednesday, September 5th, 2018, at 7:15 p.m. on the request for determination of applicability for Kathy and Brian Milan, 42 Austin Street, Bridgewater, Mass. 02324, for cutting of trees for property located on Assessors Map 127, Lot 1015, 324 Glen Charlie Road, East Wareham, Mass.
Anybody to speak to this project, like, come forward and introduce yourself, please.
Thank you.
Brian Mylan.
Hey, Brian, Mr. Burchett will read.
So again, the project is at 324 Glen Charlie Road, and the project involves the removal of several trees in the buffer zone to Glen Charlie Pond. 8 large pine trees were proposed to be removed in the buffer zone to the pond. And these trees are approximately 80 to 100 feet tall. The property does slope from a higher elevation down to the pond. It's proposed to bring a crane into the site to reach these trees. In review of the site, 3 of the trees were within the 30-foot no-activity zone, so I would recommend not allowing the removal of those 3 trees. The other trees are outside of that distance. The trees would be flush cut to the ground with no stump removal or grinding proposed, and all of the trees and debris would be removed from the site. So I would recommend the approval of the cutting of the 5 trees that are outside of the 30-foot no-activity zone with a negative determination number 3 for that work.
Thank you. Brian, anything to add? Would you like to
nothing.
comment on it?
No.
So on the plans, which are the 3 that are not to be cut? Are they, can you tell me which ones they are? So
It's not really to scale, but-
T2, T5, and T6 are not to be removed.
Yeah.
You have any questions with that?
No, David and I spoke yesterday on it, so.
Okay, thank you. Any question from the board?
No, that was it.
No.
No questions?
The 2 ladies on the end?
No questions.
Anybody in the audience for or against this project like to come forward and speak? Seeing none, I'll take a motion to close the hearing. I have a motion from Joe,
Second.
second from Kenny, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained. Hearing is closed.
Make a motion to grant a number 3 determination for the 5 trees to be cut outside of the 30-foot buffer.
I have a motion to cut 5 of the 8
Second.
trees, and I have a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained. Before you start the work, can you make sure you see Mr. Pichette? Thank you.
Thank you.
Big project, come on.
Okay, Mary, you ready?
Yep. Pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protection Bylaw, Division 6, a public hearing will be held in Room 320, Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Mass., on Wednesday, September 5th, 2018, at 7:15 p.m. on the notice of intent for Kenneth Keegan, care of Bracton Engineering and Company, 49 Heron Pond Road, Buzzards Bay, Mass. 02532, to remove existing seawall and construct new sheet pile seawall, construct a deck, install a driveway, and associated landscaping for property located on Assessors Map 1, C3, 35 East Boulevard, Onset, Mass.
Thank you. Come forward if you're, and identify yourself. Identify yourself for the record, please.
Hi, I'm Brendan Mulaney from Bracken Engineering.
I'm Kenneth Keegan, the homeowner.
Jocelyn Rennie, Ken's girlfriend
Homeowner.
and homeowner.
35. Did you find 35?
Mhm.
It's on the other side of Stonebridge.
On this side, down, basically down to the road.
Okay, Mr. Bichette will read to the
right.
project.
So the project site is at 35 East Boulevard. This application's been filed in response to an enforcement order that was issued for the unpermitted placement of trap rock on the coastal bank at this site. So the project involves the removal of that trap rock that was placed and the construction of a stone revetment on that coastal bank, which is also within a coastal flood zone. A stone revetment is proposed along 116 feet of the coastal bank at the site. Filter fabric and gravel would be placed behind the stone revetment to prevent sediment from washing through it. So I did have some questions about the size and embedment depth of the stone down to 5 feet. That seemed like quite a depth to try to get that in, and is that necessary or realistic to use those size stones and to that depth? I would recommend that the stone revetment be located so as to match the existing bank instead of being built out in front of the coastal bank and then backfilled behind it. As I mentioned, the site is in a flood zone, Zone AE elevation 14. Also proposed was to construct a deck between the two existing dwellings and to reconstruct or to construct a retaining wall to allow for the expansion of a parking area at the site. These two activities are new features proposed within the 30-foot no activity zone and therefore should not be allowed as part of the project. This site had previously been issued an order of conditions which approved work at the site, which included 2 parking areas for the property, which are shown on the site plan that we have submitted tonight, which are shown in blueprint. A deck has already been partially constructed, again, beyond the limit of what was approved under the previous order of conditions. We did get a DEP file number for the project, but at this time, I would recommend a continuance of the hearing for a revised plan, removing the proposed decks between the house and also for removing the proposed retaining wall and expanded parking area. So that's it that I have.
Yeah.
Would you like to speak to
Yes,
his
sure.
concerns? Thank you.
So first, just a point of clarification, the revetment itself will actually be 94 feet long, 116. We had originally proposed a vinyl fiberglass sheet pile wall in order to try to reestablish some of the property that had been lost. But after some consultation with staff members and with the applicant, Mr. Keegan, we've decided to go with a sloped stone revetment. Will be somewhat similar to what's there now, just more properly installed, with proper drainage, proper embedment of the toe stone. Regarding the comment about the depth of the toe stone, because we have an eroding bank, we would like to establish the toe, relatively deep, so that if there is erosion in the future during storm events or during regular tidal events, then we have protection lower than existing. We could potentially bring that up maybe a foot or so, but we do want to establish a very solid base so that the erosion on the property is not exacerbated or does not continue. The wall itself, just a little history on the property, there was historically 3 separate Chapter 91 licenses issued for this parcel for a stone retaining wall. The most recent was in 1952, and remnants of that wall are still located on the site. Through a conversation with the Waterways Division at Mass DEP and David Hill, who is the head of the division in Lakeville, he indicated that portions of the wall that we did not prove had been in existence within the last 5 years or been in, not in a state of disrepair. He could not honor that portion of the license. but portions of the wall that are still standing and seem in good shape, he would honor that. So there is a portion of the wall next to the dwelling. I have some photographs here. This section here actually is still standing. We would not actually try to rebuild anything under that license. We would go for a new license for this whole wall, but that's just for a little history that there has historically been a seawall structure on this property. The wall itself was actually licensed further seaward by anywhere from 10 to 18 feet from where we are proposing to tow this wall. So we're actually bringing it much further back from the historic location of the wall. We've tried to keep it as much as possible above the mean high water line, but based on the site configuration and the adjacent wall next door, we feel this is the furthest we can push it landward or up the bank and still protect the property with a sufficient slope and with sufficient weight and armoring of the stones. So that's why we selected this location. We also have to be cognizant of the Army Corps of Engineers programmatic general permit and what they would require in terms of fill below the high tide line, which is actually up above mean high water. And we have to basically be sure to keep less than 1 cubic yard of fill per linear foot of wall to not trigger additional filing requirements, and that is why we've come with this configuration. In regards to the other aspects of the project, I fully respect the 30-foot no-touch rule, and I think that those bylaws in all the towns are great for undeveloped lots. I've worked for a town as well, and I feel that they do work well when you can start from scratch on a vacant lot and you can put your 30 or 50 or 60-foot no-touch zone and a design on the other side of it. In a situation like this, where we have a pre-existing developed parcel that pre-existed the Wareham Wetland Bylaw and regulations, the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, it's very difficult to try to still utilize the property and meet those setbacks. It's basically impossible. We've shown the 30-foot setback on this plan, and it's actually off the locus, 30 feet from the coastal bank. So if that is applied, then basically nothing can be done at all on the parcel. The work that we've requested to do in and around the dwellings includes connecting the two structures through a deck in an area that currently is basically what I would consider sort of wasteland. There's a gapped area between the two dwellings. There already is portions of the deck that was there in some configuration, and there was historically, I believe, a deck there in the past. We would not propose to put any structural supports or any portion of the deck below this retaining wall here down onto the coastal beach, so the deck itself will be lagged.
Excuse me, please. Marie, would you like to take your conversation outside? No. Thank you.
So the deck itself will be supported by sonotubes at the top and/or lagged into the existing dwellings. There would be no supports on the beach.
In
the raised area that we have proposed up adjacent to the street, if you've been to the site, the grade drops from the road down into the dwelling, and basically the house is kind of buried under the material that rests around it. So the goal of the retaining wall is to get the material off of the house, both as a measure to protect the house and also to provide a flat access and egress point onto the property. The retaining wall itself is basically 2 feet or less in all locations, and we have proposed a leaching catch basin to capture and collect any stormwater runoff that is generated by the fill that is brought onto the property. We did do a cut and fill evaluation, and there would be approximately 30 to 34 yards of material at the very most would be needed to bring the property up to this grade. Yes, so as you can see on the plan, we do have the leaching catch basin shown up adjacent to the street, and that has been sufficiently sized to handle any additional stormwater runoff that this fill would generate. As was stated, there was 2 driveways previously approved under an old order of conditions. We have shown those for clarity in blue on the plan, but in this area it would basically be landscaped to provide both parking and landscape beds for the applicant on the property. Beyond that, that's basically the gist of the project, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that the commission has.
Thank you. Questions?
No, not at the moment.
Mr. Smith?
No, I have nothing.
No.
Any? Joe?
Not at this time.
Ladies?
Not now.
So what I'm getting is that where the wall is now, that's where you're going to be rebuilding. You're not going out, you're sort of staying, or are you going to be extending this lawn?
No, so the wall, if you look at the plan, there's a, the blue stone hatch, that's the proposed wall. And you can see there's a light gray hatch with the same style underneath it. That's the extent of the riprap that was placed, that was the reason for the enforcement order. So the wall is basically going to be rebuilt in the same general location it is now. It's just going to be constructed using proper methodology rather than just putting the trap stone on top of the thing.
And will it be as wide as what you have here with the, I mean, it's not going to be as wide. How wide is this wall? Is it going to be the whole blue?
Yeah, the blue will basically be the slope revetment at a 1.5 to 1 slope approximately. There's a detail up in the top center portion of the sheet, and that is a side profile of the stone.
No.
I am concerned where this property abuts your neighbor who has some bricks and it seems to be falling in. What will be done for that area on the left side of this property to prevent the neighbor's wall from deteriorating? Do you know what space I'm talking about? Yes, okay.
Yeah.
You want a picture?
No, I have a picture.
Okay.
I know this spot. I've seen it multiple times. So we were trying our best to balance, you know, keeping the wall as landward as we possibly could based on some of our conversations with the agent and trying to also meet all the regulatory requirements that we have. So it's a very delicate balancing act sometimes to try to fit all those pieces together. We've extended it. What we feel is as far down as we could and still meet those. But you know, if there's something that the commission would recommend or would like us to maybe try to do in that area, it's possible we could examine that. When we had gone with the original design, which was going to be the fiberglass or vinyl sheet piles, we actually were going to try to just carry one straight against that wall as almost a support. But that whole concept has been abandoned in terms of the slope reduction.
It was mentioned, but Joe and I did visit the site, and I could see where there were, should I say, framework for an existing deck between the two houses. An old post exists in there that tells me deck existed before. So it had been there. Whether it was permitted or not, I don't know, but it had been there. And I looked at the site that you want to put in some wall and fill in for your parking area off the road. If you were to do that, would it not make the water drain away from the salt water and into that new catch basin you were proposing?
Yes.
So, I mean, that would give a better chance for, instead of dirty water washing into the beach area, it will go into that leaching catch basin before it disperses.
Absolutely. If you look, we have, it's in black typeface, just spot proposed grades. And so the whole thing would be pitched to collect in that catch basin. And the catch basin will be able to handle a relatively substantial amount of water for a small area. Usually a catch basin that size can handle a decent amount of a street. This is just going to be a relatively small parking and landscaped area.
Thank you. Is there any other questions on the board? If not, is there anybody in the public that would like to speak for this project?
Yes.
Please come forward and identify yourself.
Support and concern.
Hi.
We are Gail and Bruce Hutchins, 37 East Boulevard, adjacent to property that you just were mentioning. And we thoroughly support the efforts to try and conserve that area with the wall being placed to stop the erosion that is occurring off of his property and indirectly off of our property. I do have concerns regarding the way in which the design has the wall further in, away from what was the existing, although deteriorated wall, that used to have a continuous round that met with the front of my wall. The brick wall that you mentioned was my stopgap to try and stop the erosion because the wall had deteriorated. I do not approve or recommend a right angle into my property for his wall to be either retained by myself, which would mean that I would have to really construct a wall. Right angles do not work. And that is observed from years of observation. We have a New Deal type of foundations or walls in that bay, and there's only one place where it has been breached, and that is a right angle over approximately the opposite side of our water. Other than that, it's existed, and I just see that it'll be more of a strain on my property if we have that right angle as opposed to contiguous.
Thank you.
In other words, we would like it to hook up to our wall. So there's no gap,
No angles.
no angles, because that's going to put stress on our wall as well as his new one.
Would you like to comment?
Yes, we would consider shifting the revetment in that general area down to match up and meet the deteriorating brick there and build the revetment right to it. So, sir.
Right to the front of it.
So if you look, so that's, it's surveyed as.
Yes. Correct.
We could accommodate that.
Anything else?
Yeah, just one other thing. His walk to his house, the deck. Bruce and I have lived there for 17 years now, and we have another house right there. There has been an existing deck for 50-some odd years.
Right here.
That's the only way into his house.
Yeah.
We support his efforts as far as improving his land. He's done a great job in doing so.
He needs that deck to get into his house.
There's a post right here that.
The driveway.
The previous engineered plan we
Is that
had for the
raising it?
previous application didn't show.
So is that going to be above
There was
mine?
a deck there, so there wasn't a-
Yeah, right. Only entrance way above.
You know, they showed existing
So mine will
conditions,
be
and there was
sloping
nothing
still
there.
down, and
Should
his
have
will
brought
be
that file with
sloping
you.
that way.
We're gonna have to
Okay.
continue it.
Catch basin right there. Water's going to be pitched.
Ask if the driveway's elevated.
Okay,
Yes, the
anything
driveway
else?
is being elevated.
Oh, how far?
Yeah.
We excuse the
Yes.
questions of the engine, excuse us
But
for...
right now, the driveway has not been approved to be elevated.
Oh, okay, all
we're-
right, we'll skip
And
that
how
one
high
then.
was the elevation?
It's 2 feet, if I understand the plans correctly.
It's at its very max.
Max
but
2
it's-
feet, right by the water.
Between a foot and a foot and a half of
Yeah.
raise. There's two profiles shown.
Yep, and I saw 2 feet on one of them, right, the max? Which is closest to the water, and then it, yeah.
And it'll be pitched back towards the road and back away from your property. And this is a leaching catch basin that will be installed at the corner to collect any runoff that is generated from it.
Anything else?
No. The wall is our major
Yeah, the
concern.
wall is
The
a
wall
major-
to our wall. Having the wall, please, do it. There's been erosion into that bay from the properties, always on the north side. You look at the south side of the boat ramp, you will not see much erosion, but the erosion from coming from the waters coming up against his property and my property has caused more sandbars to evolve.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else for this project? Is there anybody who would like to speak against this project? Yes, please come forward and identify yourself.
I hate it that there's always only for or against. There's not questions or modification. A couple of things. My name is Lisa Morales. I live in Onset. Mary can introduce herself, of course. I have a couple of technical questions, I guess. Whether or not Mr. Keegan is the proper applicant. He is currently not the owner of the company, of the property. He transferred that property twice in the last 2 months, 6 months, and it is currently owned by Cape Cod Beach Vacations, 35A LLC, and he does not identify himself as the agent of that in the notice of intent, nor his application here. So I don't know the answer to this question, but is he the appropriate applicant? He didn't identify the fact that the LLC owns the property, not him.
I don't know how to answer that. Mr. Bichette, any?
Well, as was listed as the owner at the time of filing, has that since changed?
He is the owner of the property. That our plan actually references Cape Cod Beach Vacations. That's listed in the notes on the plan, if you look.
But who's the applicant?
He is the applicant. On the notice of intent, Kenneth Keegan is the applicant.
Correct, not Cape Cod Beach Vacations. So regardless of what they put on a map, you've got the wrong applicant.
Well,
Mr. Keegan is the sole owner of 35A, Cape Cod Beach Vacations, 35A.
how does the assessors have it owned as?
They have,
Anything else?
exactly. I have the towns right here.
Yeah, they don't always get that up to date as quickly as they should.
Mr. Keegan purchased the property.
Right.
It transferred from Mr. Cabellis to Mr. Keegan as an individual, not as a corporation, on March 29th, 2018. And Mr. Keegan transferred it from himself as an individual to Cape Cod Beach Vacations 35A LLC on May 15th, 2018. So again, I asked the committee, do you have the right applicant? The notice of intent does not mention the LLC.
Is this relevant?
My point was that, thank you, but I don't understand how this has anything to do with conservation, wetland bylaws.
I could come in and write anything I want under any name. I'm not the proper legal owner if I don't identify myself as that. The owner of this property is a corporation, a Massachusetts corporation. It is not an individual. I don't think you can act on this because I think you need to go back to square one and get the original right applicant on this.
We'd be happy to submit a revised sheet, WPA form for indicating that 35, Cape Cod Beach Vacations, 35 LLC is the
Thank you, but
owner.
it does not change the plans in any way, just the name on the notice of,
It's already on the plans, actually.
it's on the plans, but it's not listed on the notice of intent. Is it a notice of intent?
The notice of intent is not for the owner.
Understand, and they've agreed to revise their notice of intent.
I don't know that that's legal.
I'm also a DBA. I can be a DBA on this. It's not a corporation.
I have the deed in my hand.
I'm not interested in the deed, has nothing to do with
I don't care
conservation.
who owns it. Who's the applicant? This is a
And
question
they've
for
agreed
DEP.
to do something about it,
Right,
so.
they can modify the notice of intent form. It's just a form with a correction, so they can do that.
They've agreed to do that.
But they
It is-
haven't done it. So I don't think you can act on it until they
Well-
do that.
Well, the board hasn't acted on it yet.
Anything. Is there anything else on
That's
the
an opinion.
project?
Absolutely. So the notice of intent has some technical comments that were not read out here tonight, and I don't know why. The notice of intent says, under technical comments, the proposed bulkhead would create a vertical buffer to wave action. Have alternatives, including a sloped bulkhead, been considered? Any work below mean high water, including temporary work, would require a Chapter 91 permit. That wasn't read out here tonight, nor was it discussed?
okay? And it doesn't necessarily need to be, and they have proposed a sloped revetment. That is what they're proposing. And
there
if
was
they
some
do need to-
discussion
and
as
if
to
they-
whether or not they actually needed another 91 permit.
Which they may, but that comes after this hearing. So they just put that on the form to let people know that they may need to get that additional permit. So,
I just think the public needed to know that that was added on to that by DEP. As a third point, this land is actually, I know you love to hear it, this is part of the decree of 1916. It's in his deed, and this is not land that's subject to private takeover here. He cannot modify the land. He can't make it larger, smaller, forward or backward, because this is part of the land of 1916. Therefore, he cannot change it. He cannot make it private. He cannot do any of those things to it. It's in the deed. It references it right in the
doesn't have
deed.
any issue relative to our...
Thank you, but I cannot take any consideration for anything other than wetland bylaws.
I'm just letting the public know this. Another thing is that he has taken it upon himself to destroy the marsh. He has removed all of the eelgrass growing in front of the building. Mr. Pichette's aware of this. He's been made aware of this by at least two people, myself included. I have photographs from when he took over the property in May to today, and it's been entirely denuded of marshland. There's a sign right in front of it that says, "Stay off the marsh," and that includes everybody. And he has removed, I'd like to show these to the committee, he has removed every single blade of eelgrass. That eelgrass is there to clean the bay, to filter the bay. And he should be fined and made to restore that bank, that beach, not be
We'll
given
take a look at your
prize.
photos, but do you have any pictures of him doing the work?
I don't know of anybody that would want to do it for him.
Well,
His own company's truck was there doing it,
I live there.
and so then did you or did you not do the work?
Do what work?
Remove the eelgrass?
There's been no work.
Well, we have a
I'm not
picture of the wheelbarrow and the shovels.
Okay.
We have the pictures of it in May. We have the pictures of it today. It's been entirely denuded.
I did get a report of some work being done on the grass. I did approach Mr. Keegan about what he had done to that, and told him that he did need to correct some work that he had done. It did not appear to be to the extent of what they just represented there, but I am aware of the fact that he did do some work there, and he was told that that was something that he can't do, and there was going to need to be some restoration of that.
I have walked that marsh around the edges of it, right in front of his house for 20 years. There was never tan sand there. Now there's 50 feet of it. There was never tan sand there.
Where'd it come from?
It's very clear that he stripped the
rain
beach.
sand.
This was a conversation, or you issued an order?
This was a conversation.
So we would be against any further granting of any variances of any sort. He seems to think he can do what he wants. He puts his
please be I don't want a personal discussion. You can't, please, keep it to the
I'm saying
topic.
to you that I think you should deny any further permits until he's restored the beach and has recognized the fact that he bought a piece of property that's on the water. It's a historic property, and it's on land that belongs to the public.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes.
No, I said my piece.
Can you wait 1 second to come up to the mic? Thank you.
I can't speak for the eelgrass because I'm not visible to there. As far as the tan sand, I know Mr. Keegan has raked the rock, which many, many people do along that whole cove. And that's why his sand has turned tan. He has just raked the rock away. The other thing is, I don't know how his deed reads. We own 2 homes there. I'm right next door on one of them. We own our property to low water low mean water tide.
Low tide.
Yes, our deed reads that we
Okay.
owe to low mean water.
Thank you, thank you. Anybody else want to comment on this particular project? I'm seeing none. Oh, someone's coming forward. Please identify yourself.
Glenn Morrison, 185 Onset Ave, and also 13th Street. I too have been walking that area for about 35, 40 years. And I think it's a great thing to put that wall back because I've seen it, no offense, but I've seen it chest high down there during the hurricanes. But if somebody comes down, there's a sign right there by the boat ramp. It says, don't even walk on the grass. I don't know where the grass went, but it ain't there now. And there was no lawnmower down there cutting it. So I think, as a person from Onset, many years, doing the area, I think Bruce has a great thing. They have a great idea with the wall and everything because the water's just going to keep flushing it out. And when they came through and dredged it, they should have dredged up in that area. But he should put the grass back before you allow him to do any other conservation. If you're on the Conservation Committee, conservation has to do with the eel grass and whatever you have in there. If it's gone, there's no more oysters in there. They're not going to live in there. They used to.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you.
Anybody else?
That was 185 Onset Ave.
Thank you. Well, anybody else? I see nobody else. Do you want to close the hearing or continue?
We got to continue.
Continue.
We're going to continue the hearing? I take a motion to continue the hearing to
September 19th.
to September 19th.
Is the commission going to require a revised plan for the work in the 30-foot no activity, or how does the commission want to address that part of it?
Is there anybody who wants to comment on the work within the 30-foot being the proposed deck and the modification to the parking area? Are those the two conditions you were concerned about, the two activities?
Right, the bylaw doesn't speak to pre-existing lots versus pre-developed lots or developed lots. It's applicable as a whole across any lot, so therefore it applies in this case. Even though the point was made that it's pre-developed, that's not really relevant.
I need the board. Do you want revised plans, or do you want to talk about what we have in front of us for the two items that Mr. Bichette discussed, being the deck and the parking area?
Well, why don't we give these gentlemen consensus of how the board feels? So what
Lean
they
forward
want.
to the mic, please. Sorry.
I've already forgotten what I was going to say. Next.
You want to give the gentleman a chance to?
The board should give him consensus, basically, whether we might grant the driveway addition or the walkway before. So that way he knows how to revise these plans.
All right, that's what I'm asking.
Okay. So, should we talk about the proposed deck? Would you be, where cannot take a vote? Just, is it worth his while to come forward with a revised deck plan?
I would say so.
Because there had been boards that told me deck existed before, but you're saying we don't have plans of such.
The previous plan that we reviewed and approved from the previous owner had a very accurate engineered plan, and there was no deck there other than this small piece that was shown.
That's there now.
Well, there's actually more there now than what was
Yeah,
shown on that plan. So I think the commission should see that and understand what was existing prior to what exists there now and now what's being proposed.
I guess I have no problem with the deck. The kicker is the parking areas. That's the hard one. We've already got the pre-approved ones. And I don't know how the board's going to feel as far as going that far into the buffer zone. So I don't know whether you'd want to pursue that or stay with what was
keep doing the bylaw, you
pre-approved,
gotta adhere to it.
you know, that's something you gotta think about.
Well, currently, right now, the water flows, off the street, down through the water.
Oh, yeah, I've been down to the site.
So by putting this in, what we're basically gonna do is capture a significant amount of stormwater that would have eventually made its way into the cove and would infiltrate back into a stormwater treatment system. We could add additional stormwater treatment within this area if that, would help the commission to consider this. But as of right now, this is gonna be a vast improvement, for stormwater in this area, for what's eventually entering, into the cove.
But the same modification can be made with the previously approved parking areas. You can do the same exact thing with that. You can come up with a lot of different arguments for why it should be there, but that doesn't change the fact of what the bylaw reads and how it states, and this doesn't comply with it. So that's what the commission needs to focus on. The previously approved driveways can be modified to capture stormwater runoff, just like the proposed they're doing now. So that's how I think the commission needs to regard it. It's a small site. One of the reasons for having the bylaw as it is because you have these tiny little sites and you can only do so much with them, instead of eating up every square foot of it with structures and so forth.
I'm saying, what the rest of the board wants to do.
And this is just maybe a point of order, but how could the previous ones be approved within the 30-foot setback if nothing else? I'm just curious.
Because they had parking areas there already, sort of, and that's where people used to park. You can see there was an outline of an old sort of area that people parked in, and so that's the reason why they were approved that way.
The house is there,
No.
we're gonna bury the house.
No, but they were already parking in that area anyway.
Wait, can you wait 1 second and let him finish first?
Would the commission have any consideration as to how we can try to sort of unbury, the house is basically being buried with the material that's up against it. That's what we're trying to alleviate, partially through putting in this wall in this configuration. Would there be any consideration to the wall if more of the area on top of it was landscaped rather than paver patio or pavers, or what we were intending to do, or anything of that nature? If it was native shrubs planted back with a reconfigured area, but still to be able to put the wall in order to get the material off of the house, and at the same time alleviating all the stormwater runoff that's flowing through the property.
It's still the disturbance of that 30-foot. I mean, whether you put the wall in or you put in plants, it's still disturbing that particular piece of land. Lisa, you wanted to add something?
Yes, specifically to
Question.
the question.
Yes.
Specifically to the question of the 30-foot zone, the deck and the driveway. We all in onset have to comply with the fact that we can't cover more than 20% of our lot. And that is the way it is. When you buy it onset, that's the way it is. And a deck is coverage of the lot. Now, on August 15th, this board told the Tempest Knob homeowner, you do not have to willy-nilly, you just can't go against that 30-foot zone because somebody wants a bigger parking area. You just can't do it, and you didn't always have that rule, and you told him very clearly that anybody else who had a deck had it before the town adopted that 30-foot bylaw, and I don't see why that there should be any difference under the current situation.
Thank you. Well, we are going to continue, if the board wants, continue to hearing for the redesign of the wall at the stone rebitment as it abuts to the neighbor's property. That's correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
You can revisit this, and if board members want to go to the site in the
yeah,
meantime.
and I do recommend the board members swing by and take a look at that particular piece of land and see what we're talking about.
Is it possible, and would it help to split the two so that they could move they may be able to move forward on the wall, which is really one thing.
Would you be willing?
And then file something different, so we don't have to.
Whatever you guys
would it be willing,
suggest,
would
I'm
you be
open
willing to take some of your activity off this particular plan and focus on your seawall?
I mean, my biggest concern is really the deck, to try to get my access to my house. That's my number one, and then my parking. But, I mean, it's whatever you guys suggest. I really don't know what I'm doing here. I'm kind of in over my head.
Well, it seems that if we clump it all together, you may get nothing, or nothing done for a long period of time.
You guys are the professionals.
If it were split up and we could allow you to do something, you'd at least.
Yeah, I'd love to get my deck built and be able to get into my house, and you know.
Is it possible, do you have any history of what existed at that deck?
I do have pictures of the deck going, before Mr. Cabela's developed. There was and there's actually still, you can see the footings and the,
Yes, I saw the footings that
on the
exist.
house, you can see, like, I don't know the technical words, but you can see the remnants of the decks. They're at different heights, and and it was termite infested, but
all the plans we have
don't show it.
don't show it, so.
Mr. Cabela's took it off, and maybe I can grab a plan from him if he has it. I doubt he does, but.
So I would take a motion to continue the hearing until the 19th.
So moved.
So, what is the board's consensus regarding the parking area? That the whole thing needs to be removed? Is that what I'm hearing, or?
Going beyond what's pre-approved by the previous owners is something it's gonna be a gamble on your part. That's what I'm saying. So you might want to split it up, get what you possibly could get done now.
Well, regarding the seawall, we are going to have to get a Chapter 91 license before we can do anything, and that's going to take 6 to 9 months. So there's no seawall getting built anytime soon.
Yep.
I have 5 applications in for licenses with them right now. I just got one back that we submitted in, I think, November of last year. So they're not moving very fast at all.
And the house stays buried.
You wanted to add?
Right, yeah, I just wanted to comment on the deck. It's not just so that we can get into our house, it's also for safety reasons. The way that it is now, people can fall and trip, and it's not very safe. So we do need to find a way to get that done along with the seawall. It would be very important.
Seawall's not going to happen anytime soon. But
Could I just,
Wait a sec.
I'm just wondering again, how much fill are you bringing in? Or, I think, up above, in the driveway near the road?
It's between 30 and 35 yards.
30 and 35 yards. And you're hoping to have a two-foot
retaining wall.
change in,
The maximum grade change from the existing grade to the top of the wall would be about 1.8, 1.9.
2 feet.
Just
2 feet.
But the majority of it, as it slopes back to the street, gets shorter. So the wall itself, as it slopes back to the street, will be match into the existing grade and will only be, a few inches high. So 2 foot is the absolute max. On the right-hand side, it's actually only 1.5 feet. Looking at the plan, on the left-hand side of the house, it's about right around 2 feet.
I guess the driveway bothers me a bit. That's where I sort of hang up there.
Okay. So,
Just for clarification, if you want, regarding the driveway, there's 2 sectional views, BB and CC, down at the bottom of the plan. There's a profile, so they're cut on either side of the proposed driveway. You can see the alignment. So that's basically looking at the side view of the proposed driveway.
Brendan, is there any way to get the house unburied without building that wall right there in front of the house?
that's a question for...
It's really, I don't see any other way of doing it without a wall.
Yes, right now, the walls of the house are being...
They're like 1.5 feet buried.
And why can't you just remove the dirt from them?
Well, it's if I remove the dirt, now there's a cliff. They're not just a little buried there. They're a lot buried. I started, and it's too much.
They're up to the first level of shingles.
The issue is that if he just digs out around it without retaining what's behind it, as it rains and as the stormwater comes down, all it's going to erode right back into the house, and it's going to be back to square one. All this area erodes
I'm
into.
getting all kind of ants inside, and it's
Okay.
wet.
We're going to have to see that up close, because that doesn't make sense to me, so I'm going to have to see what you're talking about.
So I do recommend a visit to the site for some of us and another visit for others. So I'll take a motion to continue until the 19th.
I have a concern before you go
Okay.
to that. They're trying to make a drainage system, okay? And if you separate those two parking areas and not slope them into, that means they gotta have some more drainage. The drainage is going to help, and it's not gonna work if you separate it. That's my concern.
Well, each one could have its own little catch basin. That's all you need. Those aren't huge areas. They're very small, actually. You're not talking about large surface areas at all.
This is a relative, the catch basin we're proposing is a 6-foot infiltration chamber with 2 feet of stone on either side of it, so it is relatively substantial and will handle a pretty good sized storm. Definitely handle all the runoff we would generate from this project. We also plan to have some landscape plantings in there as well, which will also help filter any excess storm.
Not a solid driveway. It's, I don't know how.
Okay. Anything else, Kenny?
No?
Then, someone continue with the motion to continue?
Yeah, Joe continued. Joe, you still holding your motion?
I'm still holding.
I have a motion to continue to the
second it.
19th. I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? Be back on the 19th.
Thank you all for your time.
Just a second.
Thank you.
Golly, Mary, I think you've done it again.
Okay, Mary, the next one, please.
Did that one.
You're gonna keep us the first? Yeah.
Really check a little better. I mean, I'm not in any way in favor.
Yeah. I wanna look at that.
Let me know if you want to go down there.
Yeah, you've already been down there, so it'll be easy.
I guess so.
All right?
All right. Pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protective Bylaw, Division 6, a public hearing will be held in Room 320, Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Mass., on Wednesday, September 5th, 2018, at 7:15 p.m. on the notice of intent for Stephen and Dorothy Sands, care of Braken Engineering and Company, 49 Heron Pond Road, Buzzards Bay, Mass. 02532, to replace the existing timber seawall with a fiberglass sheet pile wall and associated grading and landscaping for property located on Assessors Map 38, Lot 1001 and 353, 0 and 39 Crab Cove Terrace, Wareham, Mass.
Thank you, Mr. Bichette. We'll read to the project.
Upside down.
Oh, yeah, may we have your names for the record, please?
Stephen and Dorothy Sands, 39 Crab Cove Terrace, Wareham, Mass.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So again, the site is at 39 Crab Cove Terrace in the Parkwood area, and the project involves the removal of an existing low timber retaining wall and replacing it with a vinyl sheet pile wall in the same location, and this is right at the edge of salt marsh and also within a coastal flood zone. The timbers from the old wall would be removed and disposed of off-site. The new vinyl sheets would be driven in from the upland side. The wall is right at the edge of the marsh. The new sheets would need to be driven in without infringing further out into the marsh. Tiebacks would be installed to keep the sheets from leaning forward over time. The height of the wall should be similar to the existing timber wall. They're showing an additional height on the new wall at a height of 5.5 feet. So I had a question on that. It's also proposed to place some backfill behind the uneven areas of the wall. And how much material would be needed for this purpose? And then how would that disturbed area ultimately be stabilized? The Mass Division of Marine Fisheries also did comment on this project, and they had some similar concerns with how the original wall is going to be removed and the new wall installed, so that the salt marsh is not impacted. They also did comment about the height of the wall and how additional height might increase wave energy deflection when waves hit that wall and potentially adversely impact the marsh. They also had a concern for appropriate containment techniques during the project to prevent materials from getting out onto the marsh. We did get a DEP DEP file number for the project. So the only question, I guess, is the height of the wall and how much fill would be needed behind that. In my opinion, it should be relatively similar to the existing wall, and if there's any areas, minimal areas that just aren't level that you wanted to level off, that's fine, but the wall shouldn't be raised up 2 feet and then backfilled to create more level land on the site. So other than that, I don't really have a problem with the project. The wall does need to be replaced, so that's really the only issue about it. The other comment just to make is that the work is not actually on the property owner's property. It's on association property, which they have sought approval to work on for this project.
Comments, please.
Sure. So just to address partially what the Marine Fisheries had to say and some of Dave's comments as well. So the plan with this is that we would use a mini excavator with a vibratory hammer that attaches to it. The wall will be removed in small sections from the upland side, 10 to 20 feet at a time, and then the vinyl sheet piles will be installed in the exact same location. Usually when these type of walls are installed, you actually make a little trench anyway just to get the wall started, and so removing the old wall will provide that void to put these in and then drive down. Based on the substrate and what's in this general area, I think these will be going very easily. Should be a relatively simple project, and the wall itself will basically be in the same location. In terms of the height and the finished grade of it, we would like the commission to consider that we want to just even out some of the areas where it has started to erode behind the wall. We're starting to get a little bit of depressions. We commented in the notice that we would like to raise it 6 to 12 inches as necessary, but basically the yard is relatively flat as is, and we would like to just be able to fill some of these dips and depressions that are currently behind this wall. The wall is compromised. It's not completely falling apart, but it is in pretty bad shape, and if left alone, it likely will fail, which will cause sediment to erode into the salt marsh, and also these old creosote timbers to be within the resource area. The job itself, again, it's a small track excavator machine like you see around, very small, light footprint on the ground. The wall itself should probably be able to be installed within a 1-week period. We will not be going any further seaward than the existing wall, and we would be putting some drainage stone as necessary behind this wall to provide for proper drainage. The overall project would likely take 2 weeks in terms of preparation and some of the replanting. As Dave asked, what's going to happen after all disturbed areas will be reseeded. If the commission would like to, we could consider conditioning that where it's a native rye fescue mix and no Kentucky bluegrass or that sort of thing. That's not really intent. We'll basically just reestablish turf grass in the area which it currently is now. And I'd be happy to answer any other questions the commission has.
Rob?
No, the only thing is, Dave said, I wouldn't want to see the wall raised and the yard extended, essentially. Has to be done.
Yeah. I'm a little bit disturbed by the lack of specifics. Both Dave said this wall will be relatively the same. Well, 6 to 12 inches is what you've said, and what's been talked about, 6 to 12 inches is quite a difference. Moving a wall up a foot is not making a relative, unless you have, unless you're talking a foot from where it's fallen down and bringing it to the generalized level area. 6 to 12 inches is a lot to raise a wall, and I don't think that's our intent. I think it definitely needs replacing. It's very worn, it's not, not pretty and whatever. So I think it needs to be done, but I think that a more specific amount of height needs to be decided upon. It can't be 6 to 12 inches or 0 to 12 inches, too much, I think.
Okay. So the issue, as well as in some portions, we took elevation shots on the top of the wall, and the grades, differ by up to 6 inches or a foot. That's sort of why we use that as the baseline. So the wall itself has either crumbled or pieces of it have sunk down or just fallen off. And so we wanted to make a uniform top to it.
I agree with that. I just am trying to figure out where is your baseline for 12 inches? Is your baseline where the wall is in good shape, or is your baseline where there's a deteriorated section? I don't know. Dave, maybe you have, how you would phrase it.
So you're saying that you'd like to know if it's 6 to 12 inches from what is now the lowest point or what is now the highest point?
Yeah, sort of, that's the idea.
That's
I
what
guess the question is what are you calling the height of the existing wall? The proposed top of wall is 5.5. What's the existing wall height at its regular height?
Oh, that's what you should want to keep height. You don't want it increased. Sure it is.
This is showing.
The existing wall where we cut our profile is right at about 5 feet. And so the top of the wall is showing in the proposed section AA, as you see. So if you see the top of the wall itself is 5.5, but the grade behind the wall is 5.2 because there is a cap on the top of these to keep everything in line.
Yeah, so if that's the case, then that's really not a significant change. So
That's 2/10 of a foot.
Right. So that's all I was trying to get at. If that's the case, then it's fine. So as far as material to be needed, it's going to be a very minor amount of material that you're going to need to.
So yes, these come in 2-foot sections that are driven down and they lock in together. And then in order to lock the whole thing together, you put the cap on top of it.
Sure.
So the cap is actually going to be raised up. That's our top of wall height. What's existing there now is obviously doesn't have a cap or that sort of thing. So.
Right, so as far as fill material is what I'm getting at, is there's going to be a very small amount needed. Do you have any sense of what that is at this point, or is it just going to be like a couple yards? Or?
Yeah, it's very minor quantities, and again, there's portions of it, and Mr. Sands can speak, there's some areas where it has started to undermine and wash out behind the wall. It's depressed, so we would obviously have to bring those areas back up.
Right, okay. Yeah, with that explanation, I think it's clear that it's not going to be a significant change, so that's fine.
Anything else?
And consent was obtained from the association, right, to be able to do this?
Yes.
We submitted a signed letter, and they also signed the actual notice of the printout.
All right.
Joe?
No questions.
Kenny?
No.
Right now, at the base of that wall, there are a lot of large stones. Will that be an issue?
Out front in the marsh? Shouldn't be. Those are probably washed in over the years or...
Because some of them appeared to be under the existing timber wall. So you may be having to move some of those in order to put your sheet pile in.
The goal is to remove the wood timbers and use the trench.
Okay. Okay.
If we run into any very large boulders, we'll have to field adjust it and you're right behind it, or we'll talk to Dave and see what it is. Usually in marshy situations like this, you don't run into that a lot unless they were placed there. That obviously could have been the case many years ago, but we will know that, discuss that with the contractor.
Yes, I stubbed my toe on several of them.
Sorry.
Okay, anything else, anybody in the audience for or against this project? Yes, please come forward and identify yourself.
Hi, I'm Doug Hendry. I'm the abutter, 41 Crab Cove Terrace.
Okay.
And these guys have done a fantastic job on their updates and their building, and I can't believe the wall's lasted as long as it has, so it would be a great improvement, I think, if they could go forward and do it. So that's just my 2 cents, and that's it. I'm totally behind it, so.
Thank you.
That's it. Cool.
William Curtin, 59 Parkwood Drive, and I'm also totally with it, and I think it'd be a great improvement to the area if you allow this wall.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else like to comment on this project? Seeing none,
Motion to close?
I have a motion to close from Joe.
Second.
Second from, I heard Mary first. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained? Notice of intent.
Make a motion to grant?
I have a motion to grant the notice of intent.
Second.
I have a second from Alyssa. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? You have it before you start any work. Please see Mr. Pichette for the proper paperwork.
If you do run into any rocks underneath there, contact Dave, because they might do you benefit to have them piled up against the base of the sheet on the seaward side.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You want that, Lieutenant?
Was that it for hearings?
Yep.
Yeah.
I think. We have a notice of order, we have some minutes of June 6th. I was not at that meeting. So Mr. Baptiste, you'll have to sign this in my, so I minutes that were June 6th.
I was here, I'll make a motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve this June 6th meeting.
Second.
I have a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Abstain? I abstain, opposed, so it's 1, 2, 3, 6, 1, 0. The next one is the enforcement order for David and William Andrade at 0 Depot Street. We're still waiting, we're pending a notice of intent on that project, so nothing will be discussed this afternoon, this evening. We have certification of compliances. Mr. Pichette, can I ask people why they're here?
They'd be here for that.
Can anybody let me know what they're here for? And we can probably try to get a hold of that first before we go into certifications of compliances? Yeah.
That's why I'm here.
The certification compliance for you?
Yeah, we haven't had that yet.
We haven't, okay. So we will do the certification of compliance, Colin McNay. Colin. 31 Warren Point Road. There's your minutes.
This project was for the reconstruction of a pier at this location, which has been completed according to the order of conditions, so I would recommend the issuance of the certificate of compliance for that project.
So move.
I have a
Second.
Kenny motion, Joe seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. Gregory Morton. Jeffrey. Not enough ice cream. Jeffrey Morton. 228 Hathaway Street.
Submitted from the appraisal when I purchased the house, and in reference to what Mr. Pichette would probably address, that he alluded to me that he was completely right, and I didn't believe it existed.
All right. This project site is at 228 Hathaway Street, and this involved the construction of a single-family home at this site. The plan that is in the file and also the as-built plan that was submitted does not match up with the site conditions. It looks like there's more yard area that was created behind the house than what was shown on the approved site plan. Mr. Morton is a second owner, is that right?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
And claims that the modification was made prior to his owning it, but the people before them never got a certificate of compliance for the project. But, so at this point, there's more cleared area behind the home than what was shown on the approved plan, and that places the work closer to the edge of the wetland. So I just wanted the commission to be conscious of that discrepancy, and the commission can decide how they want to address it.
How large?
I would say it's probably 30 to 35 feet further back than what was shown on the approved plan, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Big space, the whole width.
See the pictures?
Looking at it.
I just wanted to state, if I could, that the certificate was applied for, and it appeared that the builder, Champion Builders, never closed the loop on it. And I can't really speak for the clearing, as I wasn't there. I purchased the home in 2009, and I don't know, I feel like I've been slighted by my lawyer at the time, because this, you know, was kind of, must have been brushed over, because I think I would have
Noticed?
said something about it if he had alluded to me that this was such an issue. So that's why I'm applying for it. I've basically been picking up the scraps from other people, and I've been, you know, this has taken up a great deal of time. I'm pretty busy. I have kids.
He's trying to sell it, too.
And you're trying to clean that up? You have,
I have never
plans.
done anything to it.
No, but there are plans, that's why you're coming for us now, is you need this certification of compliance. Do you need,
To sell my house. I have never cleared land at all.
which house is this?
It's this one right
Yeah, I apologize for the
here. This wall.
shoddy drawings. I had to do it last minute.
Okay, so,
The commission could continue and go look at it and
but
decide
what
whatever
can
you
we,
want to do.
but what can we do?
Yeah, how can you,
Yeah. So what is the next step the commission can do for this particular landowner?
Well, you have options to require restoration work, or you can grant it based on how things currently exist. That's up to the board.
So moved.
So moved what?
Granted, it currently exists because this wasn't this gentleman's fault.
So there is a motion on the table to grant as existing
Second.
land. And I have a second. Any discussion on it?
Is it, I'm not entirely clear where it should have been and where it is now, I guess.
Or it should have been basically here.
Along the existing stone wall.
now is kind of right there.
Okay, what does that, it's not within the 30-foot, 1 inch equals 20 feet.
Sin,
Yes, well, they're measuring, yes.
is there any benefit to just say, putting large boulders at the edge of where it is now, so that in the future, when someone, buys it, they won't have a tendency to expand their yard even more.
Okay, that's a question.
You've got a hand raising.
Wait, that is a question. Do you want to identify the border between what was cleared versus what should have been cleared for future landowners? Does it gain anything?
Or even where it is now, because if you put rocks in the middle of the yard, it really wouldn't be very helpful, but if you put them on the edge of the marshland...
Whoever would buy any more clearing on that will go into wetlands, correct?
Right. Could we...
And if a homeowner chooses to do that...
Ma'am, my only concern with that would be that there's an extremely large amount of wildlife that lives in that area. There's deer, groundhogs. You would potentially upset the ecosystem. That's my concern.
I don't want to disturb it.
Sorry. No.
Could we somehow just, if that border was marked and, because I don't feel it's right to impose a burden on this owner, but could we mandate that clearing just can't be touched and let it go back to wild in its own way?
And there's actually a second stone wall at the edge, just between some brush and the wetland. So, I don't...
So it's already there.
Already
It's already
marked?
there, then?
Yes,
The demarcation.
there is. It's the existing stone wall from
Right.
Lincoln Hill
Yes.
Farm.
Oh, you're up top of the hill.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, with the railroad crossing and the loud train.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry. So, are we saying we want to have this additional land that was cleared, marked?
No, it sounds like it's
It sounds like
already
it's
marked.
marked now by
Further
a
down,
wall.
closer to the wetland, it's marked.
And that's really what you want. You don't want to put rocks in the middle of somebody's backyard.
Yep.
They won't buy it.
This is not a new build either.
Yep.
Pardon me?
So,
Plus-
I have somebody who
No,
wants to
that's right.
comment from the audience.
Brought up the rock.
Come forward and identify yourself. Okay.
My name is Eric Goodhall. I am a home buyer for Blue Tunnel. Our plan is actually to put a chain link fence along the current tree line. We own a dog, so in the future, I guess that would be marked if we can put a chain link fence there. So we will not be cutting anything back beyond what's already cut, because there'll just be a fence there. So I don't know if that can be a marker. I guess we can move rocks behind the fence.
We need to do that.
No.
No, the rocks are there.
Okay,
There you go. He's buying the house. He's been informed.
thank you. Any other comments? Anybody else? Well, what is...
Also, the commission can, if you issue a certificate of compliance, put a condition on it in writing in the certificate of compliance as well to designate that, no further cutting work beyond what's cleared can occur as a continuing condition. So you can put that in the certificate of compliance.
That's a good condition.
That's fine. Add that to my motion.
So we have a motion to...
Second.
I have a motion to certification of compliance and second with the additional noted that no more clearing. I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
this reminds me, I'd like to see if we can get on the next agenda about adding some verbiage to our conditions to have an automatic review on these certificates of compliance, where the onus is on the applicant to actually either come back in 3 years for the certificate or to seek an extension. Otherwise, it'd be in violation of the order of conditions.
Do we have that in our conditions right now, a time frame?
I mentioned it several times.
Yeah, we don't have it
That
as
has been mentioned
language.
before.
So we can talk about adding it to the order of conditions, a time frame to,
Yes.
if you don't come back and request an order of conditions 3 years after completion.
Yeah, we have it right into the order of conditions that
Yeah.
they have to come back and seek either the certificate or an extension. Otherwise, it'd be a
Okay,
violation.
so if you could please add it to the
There's
agenda that we want that discussion.
I thought we
Okay,
had something in there.
so, next one,
Not specifically.
the Perino property at Edgewater Drive.
Thank you.
So you're set? All set? You're set, right?
Yeah.
Yes, you are. Good luck.
Yeah.
The 79 Edgewater Drive site was for a septic system upgrade, which has been completed, so I'd recommend the issuance of the certificate of compliance for that project.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. The Perinos have sold their property. Gary Dumoulin, 20 Over Jordan Road. Which one was this one?
That was also
The
septic system right on the edge of the marsh. Past Volpe's house.
Okay.
That one, I didn't feel was quite ready for a certificate of compliance in terms of the revegetation of the disturbed area, so I'd like to hold off on that till the next meeting.
Holding.
Okay, hold on.
Water Whiz, just for discussion.
Can I go home now?
Not quite. Well, you can. We have a...
No, I was only kidding.
Yeah, great.
Just one here is fine. Yeah.
We share.
I'll share.
We put 21 copies.
We share.
That's what we got in the mail.
Yeah, can't read that.
That sheet is all looked at.
So this issue is relative to a violation that occurred at the Water Whiz site where clearing was done beyond the approved limit of work line at the site, and we had asked or requested that the applicant bring in a planting plan to revegetate the violation of the disturbed area. And so this is what we have in front of us to discuss.
Where's the railroad tracks?
Are you closed for the season?
Oh, I'm not really part of Water Whiz. I'm a landscape architect.
Oh, I was going to say, it's going to...
But I think they are closed.
Yeah, the buildings.
Okay.
Just go over there today.
Hmm?
There's nobody there today.
All this heat. Okay. Would you like to talk to the plantings?
Sure. My name is Carolyn Cooney of Carolyn Cooney and Associates. We're landscape architects. And we provided Patricia Cal with this plan, which proposes to revegetate the disturbed area, which was not allowed. So it has a plant schedule with the quantity of plants. There's 12 8 to 10 foot 8 to 10 foot height trees proposed, 25 shrubs, I believe, and the whole area to be seeded with a native grass mix. And part of the restoration would involve, currently it's covered with wood chips, and so those would be taken up and disposed of in order to seed into the what was beneath them. On the plan, the gray solid circles are the trees that were cut down. So in arranging the plants, we tried to arrange them to avoid the root system. Some of the trees were fairly large, and in order to plant, we didn't want to plant right where they were. So the stumps, now, some of them are quite high. They'll be taken down to about 12 inches above the ground, which shouldn't really damage the chances that they might sprout and revegetate. There's a red maple clump there that is doing that. So I think, a lot of the stumps will at least revegetate to some kind of shrubby state, which would be good.
Yes, those saplings keep coming.
So as I said, it would be a native grass mix that is good for the sandy soils around here, and all the plants are basically natives that would be found around here. The shrubs are, there's sassafras already on the site, and I think somebody mentioned blueberry, that the commission would like to see blueberries, bayberry, plethora. So they're all, and all the grasses are native, except there's a cover crop, the grain rye, which is for erosion control, that will be quick germinating, that will die in a year, and that's not native, but it won't persist. So I don't know if you have questions.
No Queen Anne's lace?
Oh, no.
I'm just going to say that's very, never mind, that likes the Sandy. Questions on the board?
You could sneak in.
I'll throw in some Queen Anne's lace. Anything, questions?
No questions, no.
Questions?
No question? No.
So, given this plan, what would be the time frame for when this would actually be installed?
I believe as soon as possible, because we're coming into the winter or the fall. So, yeah, I would say late summer, early fall.
You're gonna get the rye down in fall though, right?
Pardon me?
I'm sorry, you're gonna get the rye down, scrape up the shavings and put in the rye before the winter hits, right?
Before the winter, right, exactly.
Stabilizes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And when the wood chips are removed, where will they be placed?
In your backyard.
Thank you.
The drawings call for legally disposing of them,
Okay.
so, yeah.
Any other questions? For our fall planting of the project,
This is
hopefully
turning into a
before
long
the
night.
heavy rains of
I
the
think it would.
hurricane.
Will you be the one handling it? Or your company, or how would that work?
No, I'm not sure. I believe
Yeah.
Patricia said she has contractors that would do it. If she asked us to oversee it, we certainly would, but we don't do installations.
Ms. Bichette, what would you?
It would be good to establish some kind of a time frame, an actual time frame, versus just saying the fall. Is this going to be done by the end of September or mid-October? Or, what's your thoughts on? Or the commission should establish that and say it should be done by this time.
Right. I discussed with Patricia doing it this season, but I would need to ask her to get back to, maybe she could get back to you with a specific date, a specific deadline.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, but he won't be doing that.
The time for seeding usually is like October 15th is like the last date. You should really be seeding, so it should be before that.
So you should say completed by October 15th.
I would say completed by November 1st. November 1st, October 15th. All right, so recommendation that the project be completed by October 15th.
Okay.
If not now, then we talk about it for the spring, but it would be recommended that it be done this
Right.
fall. Is that just a recommendation? Do I need a vote
Well,
of the board?
I think it should be, that it be required that it be done by October
Okay.
15th. There's no reason why it can't be.
Okay, requirement to be completed by October 15th. Do I need a motion and a vote by the board, or is that just anybody?
No, I'd say a
Is-
motion would be needed.
All right, I'll take a motion.
So moved.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a second. All in favor? October 15th. Opposed, abstained?
Abstain.
I have one abstain, so we have 601.
I caused it.
Opposed, abstained. Anyway, one abstain, 6 approved. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up on the board is Buzzards Bay Coalition, Wickets Island, and Sarah's up. I hope you didn't fall asleep. It's been a long day for you.
We share.
Oh, wow, thank you. Okay, Mr. Bichette, you're up.
This is put on our agenda as a discussion item. This is a project that we reviewed and approved previously to allow some improvements to the island that Buzzards Bay Coalition wanted to do, involving some trail improvement, improvement of the upper part of the island for a recreation area, improvements to the stairway access to get to the top of the island, and also improvements to the existing stone wharf and a proposed ramp and float to be added to that. Part of the project called for fill material to be brought onto the island, and the original proposal that the commission approved called for the material to be brought in by a path on the other side of the island from the pier. So it was proposed that a barge would be brought up to that area and offload fill that would be traversed over a path and up to the top of the island. After looking at this, Sarah has been getting negative feedback from contractors not wanting to do that, so she's looking at a modification to how to get the fill material onto the top of the island, which this schematic proposes, which is completely different than what the commission approved before, and so that's why it's here for a discussion. So the commission would need to hear the new proposal, decide how they feel about it, and then decide whether or not you wish to see an amended order of conditions for this project, or how you'd like to handle the change in what was originally approved to what is now being proposed, and I'll let Sarah explain what is being proposed.
This is where they were going to be.
And the south side called out on the approved plan to indicate a temporary green mat area. So it was anticipated that we would need to have a crane on this side of the island in order to install the staircase. So essentially what we're proposing is still utilizing that previously green mat area, but we'd be using that side to do the fill and pour as well as the staircase replacement. So the overall schematic, the overall concept for the preferred
there may be some buckets that kind of need a waiting area while that process is happening. So Phil would likely only stay here for no more than a day or 2 days max. It would be, the intent is to get that fill moved into the center of the island as quickly as possible. The main goal is to really to minimize barge time and to minimize time needed for a crane to be lifting all this material. So, in addition to figuring out the process for importing fill, we're also looking to be as least intrusive as we can and to find cost savings where we can. So we ultimately reduced the amount of fill that we plan to import to the island. We originally anticipated about 240 cubic yards will be needed to backfill those hazards and then smooth out that small recreational area at the top of the loam. Basically just enough loam to prep the seabed in order to be able to get the grass to grow. And that's an area that we basically want to have accessible as a picnic area that the trails on the island can connect to. So we're going to propose 4 inches of loam to prep that seabed. We're scaling that back to 2 inches in order to find cost savings there and minimize the amount of work and trips needed on this island to import that fill. So that is what's laid out on here. Also on sheet 2, a couple of other very minor things that I just want to point out as far as how we've been going through the bid process and getting ready for construction. We also received some additional contract input that made us rethink a couple of the minor details on here. One of them, well, minor details in the sense of, for the staircase footings, what were originally permitted and approved were 12-inch diameter timber piles that would get embedded to a minimum of 15+ feet into the ground. That was to accommodate a significant staircase and basically have it as significant of a structure as possible so that it wouldn't have to get reconstructed anytime soon. However, based on contractor input and additional conversations with the engineer and with the staircase designer, it's felt that those size piles were overkill. And so instead, what's proposed is to reduce those piles, instead of being very long, deep timber piles, they'd still be 12-inch width, but they'd be solid tubes instead, and they'd normally go down somewhere between 4 to 6 feet. So the engineers are currently working on the exact depth based on the staircase weight, but essentially a much less intrusive footing for the replacement staircase. So a lot lighter on the land and a lot less expensive too. So that's a win-win there. And then additionally, for the resurfacing of the stone pier, the current surface of the stone pier is in really bad shape. Originally on the approved plan, we had called for essentially taking out the top floors of stone and then putting in loam and seed and kind of creating almost like a second picnic area on the top of that stone pier. But again, in talks with contractors and taking a look at the current condition of the stone pier, we are not comfortable doing that right now. We'd rather go with a less expensive approach for the time being that would give us a little bit more life out of the pier as it is right now. And so essentially what's proposed is leaving that top stone course in place, really just putting a composite deck right over the top of that existing pier surface. So overall, much less intrusive tweaks to the plan so that we can bring in fill more quickly without more disturbance than is absolutely needed to do so.
So these are the changes that you are suggesting for your notice of intent, and you're trying to get a feel for the board if we would have any opposition to these changes?
Well,
Because you will be submitting a new notice of intent, won't you? A change order?
So we were, I was thinking that we really wouldn't need to submit a notice of intent for this, because essentially the plan is still the same in the sense of there was already temporary cream mat areas that were approved on the initial plan, so we're still utilizing that staging area. There was always going to need to be barges bringing in the fill and equipment, but really all that's changing is the side of the island those barges are on. They're not say coming up onto the beach, so we're still utilizing crane mat areas that were already on the approved plan, and we're still bringing in fill, but this time, in actuality, we're just proposing to bring in less fill, and we're just proposing to essentially do less work.
Plus a material storage site at the top of the hill, which hadn't been planned.
Right,
Yeah, okay.
So essentially, instead of constructing a 10-foot wide construction access
On the back side, yep.
on the east side,
Mhm.
rather than doing that, we would be doing this temporary stockpile, which is pretty small size and that doesn't require any clearing. And through that area is where the trail proposed, so it's right alongside there. So
Okay.
we do think that it'll just,
Mr. Bichette?
Well, as far as the stockpile area, how close is that going to be to the top of the bank?
so it's above the edge of the coastal line.
But it's right up to the top of the coastal bank.
It is, and so that's one of the challenges with the site is that there are tall slopes. And so we were either going to be driving up through that slope with construction equipment, which again, contractors just weren't really comfortable doing. So this is actually a less intrusive approach. There's a lot less chance for negative impact by going this approach and utilizing the crane instead, rather than having construction equipment doing multiple trips for essentially a 200-foot stretch of the island here. It really shortens that construction path to where there's already an existing trail from the top of the stairs.
So on something like this, typically, I know this probably isn't the path that BBC would want to follow, but typically this would require an amended order of conditions because the original plan was an engineered plan with details from the engineer, whereas this is all hand-sketched onto the plan, and we don't know how accurate or detailed it actually is relative to the distances and grades and things like that. I'm not necessarily opposed to the difference in the project, but it would be my recommendation, because the commission may also want to impose different conditions on this than were imposed on the original order. So really, I think the commission should consider an amended order for this with a modified engineered plan showing the detailed changes.
I agree.
You would rather?
Yeah,
you
I'd
would-
like to see it in writing. You know,
I get the consensus, we would like to see a modified notice of intent.
So the challenge, so essentially what our goal is to be able to open up this island to public access for next season. For next spring, really. And our primary goal is to particularly take care of the safety hazards at the top. Because even with caution tape at the bottom of the stairs, there's always people who are going up that staircase, and we really worry that there's going to be someone that is, getting hurt up there. And so we're trying to get this piece done this fall. Number one, to alleviate the hazard, but number two, in order to fall within the seating windows, so that we can get the still placed, get the loam spread, and have that work done by the end of October. We do think
Do you think you can get the modification to the notice of intent to us by 19th of September? I mean, I'm getting the impression from the board, we want to see a formal notice of intent change order.
So if we were able to get a revised plan, basically a construction phasing plan by the engineer by September 19th.
That's our next hearing. I mean,
Well, they wouldn't be able to get on for that meeting because the deadline for that meeting is tomorrow. So there's no way they're going to get the paperwork submitted to us by that.
and we're
So
back into October.
into the first meeting of October, which is the realistic time frame for them to be able to get in to us. So it, if the commission is going to want to see the amended order of conditions with a modified engineered plan, it seems like the majority of the work could still take place. The only thing that they'd miss out on is the seating window. And that's, you know, that may be the case if that's what the commission wants to see in order to get things accurate.
I don't necessarily need to see it. I want to know it's in place. You know what I mean? I mean, I'm okay with the changes, but it seems seems a little slipshod from just from this organization's point of view to not have the actual paperwork done.
And without strong paperwork, how are you going to ever issue a compliance?
Right.
Yeah, you know, if in fact it's written the way we hear, then I think I'm certainly in favor of it. Is there a way to, I mean,
Green area and the water line and everything.
I'm not sure what's allowed. Is there a way to essentially approve it if in fact it is written as told?
Well, no, you can't approve anything you haven't formally had in front of you to review. So you have to wait for the plan and application to be
I was wondering if
submitted.
there was a hedge on that, because we've reviewed the basics and we've reviewed the changes, but we just haven't reviewed.
Right, you can be comfortable with all that, but you can't vote on something
Right.
that's not in front of you to vote on.
Right.
So,
I didn't know if there was a workaround here or not. Haven't been here long enough.
Ask the question. Ask the question.
Anything else?
About the amended order.
I'm hearing the recommendation for an amended order of conditions.
Out delaying things, though.
Yeah.
It can't be helped. Got to do it right.
What is, technically, what's the alternative? Like,
We don't approve, they go back to the original,
They
which
can't
can't
do
be
that.
done because no one's willing to build that
Yeah.
back wall, that back driveway.
yeah,
Well, now,
Yeah.
and look at it this way, I mean, I like the proposal, because now they're going to use the existing pier or dock or whatever is there, instead of landing on the beach and everything else. So it's a win-win, but it's got to be done on, it's got to be on paper.
Yep.
It's got to be on paper. I'm sorry, that's my personal opinion.
Can I ask, so what do you think triggers the need for an amended NOI in this case?
It's a major change. It's a major change. Right, David?
and the fact that the commission may wish to condition the project differently based on the changes. Again, typically, any notice of intent requires an engineered plan, which we did have and we approved. This change is not engineered in any way, it's just your drawing over the engineered plan, so that's not typically acceptable.
right.
So that's one of the main problems, and again, just the fact that the order references a given plan, and now we're going to have a completely different plan that's not going to be referenced by the order. So that's typically why you require an amended order, so that the order can reference the plan that's of record. And right now, that's not going to be the case.
So is there a workaround to get it on the next meeting?
Not unless they can walk in with a plan tomorrow to have that, because we have to put a legal ad in the local newspaper, and that's got to be in so many days ahead of time, so that's the issue.
Okay, but can the ad be placed and then the plans show up by the meeting. Again, I'm looking for a workaround, because they have a time schedule. I mean, we as a board don't care. It shows up when it shows up, we vote on it, and it goes, but that's not the case on the other side of the table.
So you're suggesting maybe we put our ads in before we see the amended plan?
Is that a possibility? I haven't been here long enough to know if
Yeah, that
this kind of
typically,
can be done.
yeah, that typically isn't done, because what if nobody shows up with a plan and we put an ad in the paper and then, you know what I mean? Usually you need to have something in place before you.
I do. I just look at it as, you know, we're trying to find a workaround, and we have done a lot of business with the particular.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, I'm not looking to delay what they're trying to accomplish,
So we
but.
do know what we're dealing with. It's not,
Mhm.
you know, so that's all I'm asking. I'm
Well,
just
again, that
getting out of the
depends,
box here.
I guess the question has to be asked, do you think you can have a plan by September 19th from the engineer?
By September 19th, yes, tomorrow.
Right.
Can I ask one more follow-up question? So is it largely the temporary stockpile location that is viewed as the major change?
Well, I think it's just, yeah, it's the whole thing.
East and west.
Whole plan is just a lot of.
It's the whole approach. You're coming up the other side of the island, which is a good thing, but
on the beach.
it's still a major change.
So there was always work proposed from that side. Again, we did have the temporary crane mat area there because we always anticipated we need to work from that side in order to install the staircase. So really the only difference there is that we'd be bringing in fill also from that side, not just replacing the staircase from that side. Because that's what I'm just trying to get clarification on what is viewed as a significant change. Is there a way that?
Well, you have
Well,
the anchoring
looking-
of the stairway. That's a change.
It's just the overall concept that was approved. And again, the order references a given plan, and now the plan's going to be completely changed, and the order won't reference that. So the order of conditions won't be accurate. And so typically, if there's a change made to a project of any significance, which this is completely different than the original proposal in terms of how the material is going to get there, how the area is going to be utilized on the other side, that's the reason why this has to be shown from the engineer versus just hand sketches on a plan. We can't have that sort of changes being made by individuals coming in, because then anybody could just come in and start hand modifying engineered plans. That's the whole point of having an engineered plan in the first place, is to make sure you have an accurate, detailed plan that's going to be the plan of reference. And that plan is then referenced in the order of conditions, which is the permit. So if you really change that, then the order needs to be changed. And in order to do that, you need to have another hearing.
Your temporary stockpile is not an issue with me. I've worked in the construction field, and I understand that.
It is
It's
with me.
not a big deal, because it's just, you're just moving your material off your barge as quick as you can. I understand that. I'm going to, no problem with that. It's just that the whole thing has been swapped from one side to the other, and it's totally different. That's where I stand.
Yeah, I'm getting, we would like to see an amended order of conditions. The question is there any way we can get it on the 19th? And the answer is,
We can put an
No.
ad in if the commission wants to do that.
so, okay, the commissions can say, do we want to put in an ad and hope that the plans are before us, before the 19th?
What happens if the engineer doesn't do it?
Then we have a hearing and ask the hearing to be continued.
Then Russian roulette.
Yeah, I mean, that's a possibility. I mean, the idea is to try to get the project done sometime this fall. Can we save 2 weeks by putting in the ad before we have the plan?
Yeah, if it was June.
Anybody
no one would
willing
care.
to accept that?
I would.
Yeah.
I will.
Mr. Fischett?
If the board is okay with it, then that's fine.
If the plan doesn't come, we defer the meeting.
Right, it's just like the green cards don't show
So
up,
we
Make
need,
sure the plan's here.
you know?
so we need to have
It's not a
whatever
big
work.
engineering
Before the
plan.
19th.
So we
can
have
look
to
at
make
it.
sure that the ads are placed tomorrow? They go on,
We need to have the submittal of the legal ad fee, you know, so we can put the legal ad in.
so I guess you're taking a trip to Wareham tomorrow to pay for the legal fees for the ads, and that your toes are to the fire to get us a plan before the 19th. Anything else?
Seems like a workaround.
Okay.
Yeah, there's got to be some way to get this off the ground.
I just want to put it on record that nothing personal, but I'm not in favor of this whole thing. That's all. That's my opinion. The
You mean
board
putting
wants to
the
go
ad
with
in
it.
before the plans arrive?
Yes.
Okay. Then I guess I would like to take a motion to go this route of submitting the ad before the plans are in place. Anybody wants to make the, I have a motion.
So moved?
I have a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Abstained. 60610 to submit the ads before the plans are available.
Say a couple more times.
Okay? Anything else?
Motion to
Wait.
skedaddle.
Mr. Clemmy, was there a reason why you're here?
Just waiting for David's annual report here. Doesn't he have a report that he does at the end? It's a spectator. Maybe you can put it that way.
I don't have any report.
I think the annual report is
Well, I'll bring it
still
up then,
being
while we're
written.
here. First of all, the Buzzards Bay Coalition has an illegal,
We know about that and we're working
Okay.
it, yes.
that's on two,
The
one.
float is a surprise to us, yes.
And the other is, how far away, I could ask the commission, we've never been notified.
Mr. Clemmy, can you come up to the speaker? Mr. White can't pick you up from there.
New fish in the barrel.
Yeah.
My name's Carl Clemmy, 18 Winship. Well, there's two 18s, we're just the regular people that live there. Is the coalition, how far do you have to be away before they notify you that we're in a butter? Do you know, David?
For what?
For them, when they have a public hearing?
Just like anybody else, they have to notify anybody within 100 feet of their property.
Okay. My other thing is, you know, we have a letter, we've been in front of 3 boards. It seems that there's an ongoing violation. I hear you must have mentioned, Madam Chairman, 30 times tonight about the 30-foot setback regulation. These cars are going right 10 feet from the water. Violation, violation. Using a path that you gave a order of conditions to in 2016, still don't have the certificate of compliance.
That
They
is
use it every
correct.
day. I'd like to have the board come over, walk over this property and look at it. I mean, we can't continuously have one people doing one thing and the other people doing the other.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Now, Mr. Leggett, I think you were trying to do something?
Yeah, motion to adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn at 9:16. I have a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Done.
This will be the last meeting I stay past 2 hours.